You guys doing okay?
Oh
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
doing great.
Good. All right. What you like in Super Bowl?
Who cares?
Yeah,
The
I'm not
meteor.
even.
The meteor is the good answer.
Really?
Don't like either of those teams.
No.
You you were running for the Lions, were you?
I wanted the Lions to make it.
Oh,
And of course they had to sell the game, and then I wanted the Ravens to beat the Chiefs, but Lamar Jackson just didn't feel like it.
yeah. I hear you. I'm kind of Kansas City out myself. I'm
Mm.
kind of tired, but it would nice to see some different some dumping blood in there. And I'm never a San Francisco 49er fan because they've knocked my Bengals out twice.
The following is a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome in, students, to the game. My name is Alex Baumann, and I'm joined by my co-host, Nathan Glidewell. Nathan, let's hop right into some NFL discussion because we have a lot of coaching hires to go over, as I believe the only coaching position left as reporting this video is the Washington Commanders. But it's looking like they've nailed down their options to Lions offense coordinator Ben Johnson and the Ravens defensive coordinator Mike McDonald. So we might get that news during the middle of the week. We'll see. But let's go over the guys that have been hired already, starting with the biggest name so far this coaching cycle. The Los Angeles Chargers hiring Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh to the same position. Nathan, do you think the Chargers made the right hire here over hiring Harbaugh over guys like Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick, some of the coordinators in the league like Ben Johnson, stuff like that?
I absolutely think they made the right hire. I mean, he's coming off a national championship victory. His resume speaks for itself. He's honestly the coach who was a half away from winning a Super Bowl back when he coached for the 49ers. So to pick up a guy like this, I mean, there were rumors for some time now, and especially going back to last offseason, everyone was wondering when he was going to leave for the NFL. I guess he felt like he accomplished everything he wanted to in college football with the Michigan's recent national championship victory, and he decided to move on to see maybe if he can take the Chargers to the Super Bowl. But for Chargers fans looking at some of the other guys available, I mean, Pete Carroll, I think you can argue could still give you a few good years, but you don't know his longevity. Of course, Bill Belichick's longevity is definitely not there. So of all the guys available, I think Jim Harbaugh was a pristine hire. I don't know how well he's going to work with Justin Herbert and that offense. It's a lot of new faces, and there's going to have to be some moves made this offseason because this Chargers team is not 100% ready, even if they want to try to make the playoffs. So Jim Harbaugh is going to have his hands full. But if any coach is available to do it, and if I think someone's going to be able to make it happen, it's going to be Jim Harbaugh. I also think there's something to think about with all the things he dealt with with the NCAA this year and the scandals with cheating. Can it come back to bite him? I don't know if he's basically untouchable now or not. I guess that's something we'll look into later. But as far as the Chargers landing a head coach in Jim Harbaugh, I mean, that was an amazing decision.
I have to agree. I think they really nailed this hire. I don't think he get any worse than what Brandon Staley was for the Chargers. I mean, I think Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick, Ben Johnson, Mike McDonald, whoever you hired was going to be better than Brandon Staley because dude was just not a good head coach. And I think Jim Harbaugh is going to come in and revitalize his team, get Justin Herbert to the playoffs, hopefully get him a playoff win and not blow a 30-point lead to the Jacksonville Jaguars like Brandon Staley did. The one thing I'm going to look for the Chargers is if they stick with Austin Eckler at running back or if they go draft one, maybe they go get Blake Corum in the draft or something like that because Jim Harbaugh's offense, he loves to run the football. Austin Eckler's 31 years old right now. I believe he'll probably be 31 at the start of next season. So I don't think he's going to have the legs to be the bell cow running back that Harbaugh likes to use. So I'm interested to see what they do at that position and then how they manage this cap space going forward. They're going to be $27.5 million over the cap space. Not going to have a lot of flexibility there. The roster is pretty thin as is. The cornerback room's not great. The offensive line, pretty average at best. So I'm interested to see how Harbaugh and then whoever the GM they hire, which is an open position they have right now, is going to come in and manage this roster going forward. And if they can compete in the AFC West, where we see the Chiefs back in the Super Bowl again, and the Las Vegas Raiders on the up and up, and then the Denver Broncos, we'll see what happens there considering the quarterback
whatever
situation.
that mess is.
Yeah. So let's see what happens there. Some news for Michigan, though. To replace Harbaugh, they went ahead and promoted offensive coordinator and offensive line coach Sharon Moore to the head coach position instead of going out and hiring somebody like Brian Kelly, who's rumored to go there. Nathan, once again, do you think the right decision was made here to promote Sharon Moore?
Of course. I mean, the dude had the locker room this season during Jim Harbaugh's time being suspended over the course of this season. He took over as the interim head coach. And every single time the players rallied behind him. You think back to the Penn State game. I think that's one of the biggest, where he comes out, he gets the win. He's out there crying in this interview. It's a very emotional time for him, but you talk about how well the players play behind them. They believe in his mission, and really his mission was aligned with Jim Harbaugh all along. So I expect things to be pretty similar to what they did this year, albeit losing a few guys to the transfer portal. I think there's definitely going to be a few people leaving. Kind of similar to the Nick Saban situation, but definitely nowhere close to the magnitude of it. But I like the way they were able to get him in quickly and not have that job opening for so long that players decided to let their minds run, maybe go ahead and get in the transfer portal and see what offers they got. And honestly, Michigan going forward, we don't know what they're going to be without Jim Harbaugh. He made a huge impact on the program, especially this year. And then you think back to whatever other mess happened outside of that. But with Sharon Moore, he's going to have a good roster in place, and I think he's going to be a good head coach moving forward. Still a lot of question marks though, because we're entering a basically new era of college football with this 12-team playoff.
Yeah, I think they made the right decision as well, Nathan. I don't think Brian Kelly would have been the answer. I don't think he could have gone out and hired a head coach.
No,
because it would have been similar to the Kalen DeBoer thing where players would have just hit the portal in droves. And if you keep Sharon Moore there at the head coach position, because like you mentioned, Nathan, he had that locker room, the players were behind him. So there's a less likely chance that players are going to hit the portal. And I believe as of recording this video, nobody at Michigan, at least notable, has hit the portal as of now. So they've been able to maintain that roster. But one thing for Sharon Moore is he lost Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator, as Minter is going to follow Harbaugh to the Chargers to be his defensive coordinator. So as Sharon Moore is that offensive-minded head coach, he's going to have to go out and get a really good defensive coordinator that can do the things that Jesse Minter did this season. Because honestly, Jesse Minter and that defense ended up winning Michigan that national championship because of how they played against Alabama in the trenches and then how they handled Washington's offense.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna have to give me a minute here, Nathan, with this one.
Yeah, go ahead and take your deep breath before we get into this.
The Carolina Panthers promoted assistant general manager Dan Morgan to the president of football operations and the general manager position, and then hired Tampa Bay offensive coordinator Dave Canales to be the team's next head coach. Nathan, I'm gonna let you go ahead and hop in on this one, and I'll piggyback off your stuff.
Yeah, I know you're gonna need a minute. What Dan Morgan. That was not the move. I'm sorry. He has failed in the position he was already in. And really, it has just been a hierarchy running the Carolina Panthers to this point, and everyone has failed this organization. And for Dan Morgan to be placed in the position of general manager and head of football operations, I mean, you can just go ahead and forget about it. Offseason moving forward, I think go and scrap it. You're a Panthers fan, go and find some other team to root for, because it's just going to be a repeat of last season. Bryce Young's to be running around. He's probably going to get his head taken off. I feel bad for him, but there's not going to be much improvement. And if there is, it's going to be very slight. But you go out and get Tampa Bay Bucks offensive coordinator, Dave Canales. Look, he did a pretty good job this season improving the Tampa Bay offense. I mean, Tom Brady leaves, you bring in Baker Mayfield to kind of run around with your veteran receivers, and somehow they got to the divisional round of the playoffs against a Lions team that was very underrated this season, in my opinion. Look, I think there probably could be worse hires, but
Frank Reich comes to mind. He's a big one.
Yeah, he's definitely up there. But I question the offense he wants to run. I don't think Bryce Young is going to fit well in the scheme he had, what he did at Tampa. So you're really going to have to look at someone to build around Bryce Young. in his style of play, which is more of a playmaker style than Baker Mayfield's just standing in the pocket and throwing to some of the best receivers in the league. Because Bryce Young has nowhere close to that. He definitely does not have the offensive line capabilities. And if Dan Morgan thinks what I'm thinking he's going to do this offseason, he's still not going to have any of that. So it's going to be a long road for Panthers fans. And honestly, anyone who lives in North Carolina and roots for this pro sports teams there, I mean, the Charlotte Hornets are a dumpster fire. They can't get anything done in the front office. It's basically the same complications on both sides of this pro basketball, pro football. You can forget about it. I don't think Charlotte needs to have any more pro sports teams, honestly. Then you just need to go ahead and relocate, rebrand as a franchise, because I don't think anything is good that is going to come out of Charlotte.
Here's my thoughts with Dan Morgan when it comes to hiring him or promoting him for that. He's working already as the assistant general manager under Scott Fitterer, who got fired, who was the general manager after a league worst 2-15 season, and Fitterer made some pretty awful moves. The drafting under Fitterer was pretty poor. I went over that in previous show we did when we talked about J.C. Horn over Pat Surtain, drafting Akeem Ekwonu, who was one of the worst, if not the worst, offensive tackle in the league right now. And there's a countless other guys trading up for multiple receivers and never worked out. I mean, and then you go out and you go, okay, well, let's hire his the number 2 for Scott Fitterer here and go promote Dan Morgan. And while Dan Morgan has done some good things in the front offices, whether he's with the Seahawks or Buffalo Bills when they drafted Josh Allen, I think this team really could have benefited from going out and getting an outside hire, a new voice, and sort of rebuilding this roster under their vision. I don't know if Dan Morgan has that capability right now. It's his first time as a general manager. And when he was an assistant general manager, he didn't do a whole lot getting this team better. Honestly, the team got about 1 million times worse under him and Fitterer. I mean, you go from having Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, and being basically, in my opinion, a quarterback away from being in contention in the NFC, which is pretty weak at that quarterback position already, to now being the worst team in the NFL. It baffles me how you go from that in basically one season. And I know you wanted Bryce Young, but it's beyond frustrating. And then you look at Dave Canales. I don't think the Panthers could have got this right because they go out and hire the best NFL head coach of all time, whoever you want to say that is, and this team still wouldn't be good. It's because the offensive line it's awful. It's basically the Titans last season. The defense, I mean, we're going to have Brian Burns probably walk unless they want to franchise tag him. You got Derek Brown on an expiring contract. Frankie Louvu, who is arguably the second best player on defense last season, on an expiring contract. So basically your 3 top players on defense are going to be walking unless you try to convince them to come back. So, I mean, this roster, it's in a bad place. But the thing with Dave Canales is, you kind of pointed it out, Nathan, his work with Baker Mayfield this season and helping the Bucs get to the divisional round in the NFC. I don't think anybody expected that. So, I mean, that worked there. And then his work with Geno Smith the previous season, getting him to the Pro Bowl and him playing some pretty good football after pretty much being backup quarterback his entire career. So if anybody can get something out of Bryce Young and this team, hopefully Dave Canales can. He has the pedigree and the time frame to show what he's done in the league so far. So I'm excited to see what he can do, much more than I am Dan Morgan.
Tough segment,
all right,
Alex, there.
Yeah, let's move on to another NFC South team who ended up hiring their head coach. And no, Nathan, it is not the New Orleans Saints. I am sorry, they still have Dennis Allen. The Atlanta Falcons hired Los Angeles Rams defense coordinator Raheem Morris to be the team's next head coach. Nathan, any thoughts on them hiring Raheem Morris over somebody like Bobby Slowick, who I honestly thought going up to this hire was going to be the favorite to get the job?
I was back and forth on it, and honestly, you heard all these rumors about Bill Belichick being hired for the Falcons as head coach, and honestly, the whole entire time I'm thinking this dude's on the wrong side of 70. Why are you trying to bring this guy in? It's obvious what he did with the Patriots didn't work, and without Tom Brady, you can just forget and forget about it. But anyway, moving on.
Ritter.
Yeah, he's gonna come in there and say, "What is a Desmond Ritter?" I'm sorry, but Raheem Morris stepping in. I like the work he did with the Rams defense the past few seasons. especially you think about this season. I thought there was a bunch of injuries across the board. That's like the number one thing the Rams have dealt with over the past few seasons. And without that, he's had guys just step in and just make plays. And honestly, they looked pretty good throughout the season. And I know they came up short; they missed the playoffs, but still, I thought they had a better record than I thought they would, or depending on how you look at it, the Rams just as a whole performed better with him as a defensive coordinator. But stepping into the Atlanta Falcons job, the defense is there. I see a lot of young talents in there. You need to keep drafting and keep improving, especially that linebacker position and the edge positions. But you look at the offense and the way guys were utilized this season under Arthur Smith. Awful. I'm sure Atlanta Falcons fans can agree with me there that a lot of times they weren't even on the field. The best producers weren't even on the field. Bijan, high draft pick, and Arthur Smith just completely decided not to use him. Tyler Algier, he's a good back, but whenever you spend the first round pick on a running back, you kind of expect for a team to use him and for him to be the bell cow in the offense, not for this to be a running back by committee scenario. You got a young talent in Drake London. He's had some pretty impressive games, I would say. And it's like he goes from one impressive game to just not getting any targets at all. I don't know if that's on Desmond Ridder at quarterback or if it's just play calling.
Probably both. I mean, you look at Arthur
Yeah.
Smith and then you look at Desmond Ridder and you're like both equally bad.
I don't know. But as far as Desmond Ridder goes, I don't think he's a future quarterback of the Falcons. I think you need to go ahead and move on. You had your fun doing this experiment. Coming out of Cincinnati, he looked like a decent talent. And honestly, you're a little skeptical because with these not Power 5 schools at the time, you kind of wonder how well can they produce talent. And honestly, coming out, he looked pretty decent. But taking over the Atlanta Falcons, he was kind of thrown into the fire. Not a good situation when he got there. Still not a great one, but it's slowly improving. The only problem is he's not improving with it. And with that, I think it's time for him to move on. And you look at the upcoming drafts, there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks available. So it's going to be a high priority for Falcons fans to be able to draft at least one. I'm not saying you have to go and reach for one. I'm not saying you have to trade up or anything like that. But wherever your pick is, you just kind of sit and wait and say, hey, if this guy's available here, go ahead and take him, whoever that might be. But Raheem Morris has a pretty complete roster, in my opinion, set up. A lot of people were predicting the Falcons to go to the playoffs this year. That's how well their roster is designed. So I think there is a few pieces away from them being able to make the playoffs and take over the NFC South, which hurts as a Saints fan because I would like us to win the NFC South every year. But as far as hires go, Raheem Morris is pretty good.
I'm not completely sold on Raheem Morris just because he's already been in Atlanta. He was I believe, the defensive coordinator under Dan Quinn. Then he was the interim head coach when Dan Quinn ended up getting fired in 2020. He went 4-7 as the interim head coach, and then he wasn't given the full-time job. Then he went to the Rams and became defensive coordinator there. Like you said, Nathan, he did great things with the Rams defense considering the pretty poor amount of weapons they had on defense. I mean, it's pretty much Aaron Donald, Ernest Jones, and a bunch of nobodies. I know they had a pretty good draft this past season, getting guys like Byron Young from Tennessee, and then I believe the guy's name was Colby Turner, defensive tackle. So I think he's gotten a lot of good things out of players that you really didn't expect to be starter caliber players in the league. So I think he's a great defensive minded coach, but it just really comes into question with a team where the defense really wasn't the problem last season. It was the offense for majority of it, and the defense really didn't get a lot of pressures. But the offense was the big issue. I know that a lot of that lands on Arthur Smith calling pretty bad plays and scheming up a lot of bad things. But he hired Raheem Morris, and he goes out and gets the passing game coordinator from the Rams, Zach Robinson, who hasn't called an offensive scheme in the NFL yet. So there's question marks there if he can be good at the offensive coordinator position. I personally would have gone with somebody like Bobby Slowick, who's proven at the offensive coordinator position, and they could let him go out and hire some defensive minded coordinator there and help that out. So we'll see what Raheem Morris does. I personally would have gone a different direction. And then the last hire here, the Tennessee Titans hired Cincinnati Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan to be the team's next head coach. Nathan, is this a step up from Mike Vrabel, or did they just take a step down?
This is a step down. This is Tennessee Titans fans are in shambles, and if you're not, you don't know about football. Look, Brian Callahan is a good offensive coordinator. He's a good offensive coordinator. He's not a good head coach, or at least I don't think he will be. He's getting thrown into the fire here. You're losing all your weapons. You have a three-headed demon at quarterback, and you can't decide which one to play. One needs to just go ahead and retire. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that he knows who he is. But as far as weapons you have available, DeAndre Hopkins, who might not be in the league for much longer, Traylon Burks at receiver, who can't stay healthy, Derrick Henry's leaving. Your offensive line is the worst in the league.
No, the Panthers. You forgot the Panthers.
I'll give it a tie. How about that? Because it is very, very bad. And not to mention the defense being absolutely shredded. Kevin Byard went bye-bye, so you have no one left there.
Jeffrey Simmons.
I'm sorry. They have Roger McCreary, and that's about it. He's going to throw him to the Wolves right here. It's going to be a tall task, and I really hope that Tennessee Titans fans don't expect a lot of wins this coming season, because there won't be many. It's going to be awful. This is going to be the certified tank, and honestly, they might be in the running with the Carolina Panthers for worst team that season. You can go ahead and start taking your bets now. But yeah, I feel bad for Brian Callahan. I think he's a good offensive coordinator. I think he has a great offensive mind. You saw what he did with Joe Burrow over the past few seasons. I mean, that offense carried them to a Super Bowl with a crap offensive line. I will say that, and whatever Joe Burrow and whatever drugs he took the past few seasons, I don't know. He obviously got clean this past season. But moving forward, I don't know how long he's going to be there with the Titans. It really just. It depends on what the fans think it's going to happen. And if I'm a fan of the Tennessee Titans, I'm not expecting much.
Yeah, Nathan, I have to agree. I think this is definitely going to be the tank season, because you're going to have Will Levis, Traylon Burks, and then a bunch of scrubs on offense. I don't think there's going to be this revitalization in 1 year under Brian Callahan. Like pointing out, Nathan, he did great things in Cincinnati with Joe Burrow and that offense, but he had Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and a bunch of weapons on offense. He didn't have Will Levis and then Traylon Burks with his number one weapon. So he's going to have a lot of work to do here. I'm glad they hired an offensive-minded head coach, but I still would have kept
Too little,
Vrabel
too
around.
late.
I think they should have kept Vrabel around.
They should have, definitely.
I mean, he was doing a lot more with a lot less, and you give him crappy roster to work with, he's not going to give you a Super Bowl. I'm sorry, he's not going to give you a Super Bowl with Will Levis at quarterback in his rookie season. It's just not going to happen. All right, let's hop into some college basketball discussion here, Nathan. I'm kind of disappointed Gray dodged this today with the Auburn-Alabama discussion in the game that happened when the lights went out. Bama ended up winning that game 79-75. Nathan, what are your thoughts on both teams after watching this game and then watching their performances? Alabama versus LSU winning 109-88, and then Auburn ended up losing once again to Mississippi State 64-58. So, just what are your thoughts on both these teams right now?
Yeah, I'll start off with Auburn. I think all three of us has been pretty high on Auburn this season, what they've been able to do, especially through the start of the season. I know they had some rough patches, but ever since that Indiana game, they've been playing at a very, very high level. They started SEC play at a very, very high level as well, going 5-0 and coming into this game 5-0 in the conference play. And really no game was close. Every single game they won was pretty much by double digits. Brees Hall has been a great coach for the first part of the year. And then they walk into Tuscaloosa, and I know there's deals with the electricity lights going out, blah, blah, blah. Auburn fans want to poke fans at Bama fans for our crappy basketball arena. I'm sorry, we're too focused on winning in football to upgrade that, but Greg Byrne needs to get on that. Moving away from that, though, Auburn on the offensive end, pretty poor, 20% from behind the arc. I felt like the only guy really participating was Janiah Brim. He had 25 points, 5 blocks, and 14 boards. He was all over the place. And really, I thought he should have gotten more touches. And that's what the 17 shots he ended up taking. Aiden Hallway came out in this game, and he decided he wanted to just run up and down the floor. 0 for 7, didn't do much, didn't provide much. He played 22 minutes, and I really was just absolutely surprised at why Bruce Pearl kept him in. That was a big question mark for me. And then you had other guys, Jalen Williams, didn't get going till the second half of the game. He put up a goose egg in the first half. That's a guy you need to play almost like an SEC Player of the Year, in order to continuously win games, and he just did not have it. The rotations were pretty weird from Bruce Pearl in this game.
Yeah.
A lot of minutes from Chad Baker Mazzara. I felt like he offered a lot of good stuff off the bench, a lot of good defense. But shooting wise, he was kind of shaky, and then he missed some crucial free throw down the stretch whenever he got fouled on the 3. I don't know if that was a foul or not, but beg to differ.
Offensive foul.
Oh yeah, offensive foul. It definitely was. He could just let it out, but doesn't really matter. KD Johnson, another guy, put 22 minutes in this game, played more than Chris Moore as a starter. But KD comes out. I think Bruce looking for him to be more of this energy guy, and he just did not have a very good shooting performance. He went 3 of 7, could not hit anything from behind the arc, and he had 4 fouls, and really gave up a crucial putback dunk from Grant Nelson, not boxing out late in the game. I get what Bruce Pearl was trying to do in this game. I really do, and it's not all his fault that his team can perform as well. They can shoot as well, and you're going to have games like that. But when your rotation revolves around putting energetic guys in the game and not focusing around, number one, what has gotten you to this point, and that has been very, very good defense transitioning into the offensive end. And we saw a little bit of that in the second half, but felt like in the first half, it was really just trying to get guys to come off the bench, be energetic, try to get in their heads. And I got to give credit to Nate Oates in this one. He had his guys ready to play, especially with the technical difficulties. I mean, there's a lot of things to think about throughout this performance, but you had guys like Rylan Griffin, who decided to turn into prime Steph Curry, coming off the bench, playing 31 minutes. He had 17 points, had 5 of 10 from behind the arc. Latrell Brightsell has been phenomenal past few games. He was 4 from 6 from behind the arc, putting up 14 points. Of course, Mark Sears, he's going to get his. He had 22 points in this one. It's just really, really cool to see how this Bama team performed under pressure, especially starting down early on this one. It looked like Auburn was they started off hot. I think they were like 5 of 5. Whatever things did start get going after the whole light issue. But Alabama fought back hard. A lot of adversity in this one. 14-point lead at half. I don't think anyone would have thought that was the case early on. Auburn comes back out fighting, and then I got to give credit to Grant Nelson. I mean, even though he didn't shoot the ball well, he comes out and he just transforms to this whole other player. He airballs a 3 and then decides he just wants to dunk it over 2 people for the and one. And he was just really energetic on both ends of the floor. His defense was right there. He had a tough matchup with Janai Brim. I mean, Janai got his. But whenever he was able to control the paint and play as that stretch 5, I felt like the offense was a lot better. He got to the free throw line a lot on drives, 8 and 9 for the free throw line. He's been a fantastic free throw shooter in this one, and he ended up with a double-double, 14 points, 11 rebounds. Can't ask much more from him, but he was definitely the energetic player from the Crimson Tide team. But I really felt like Nate Oates outcoached Bruce Pearl in this one. They had the better game plan. I get it wasn't Tuscaloosa, but if you're Auburn and you want to make a Final Four run, if you want to be deep into the tournament, you got to have answers for games like this. And this is one I felt like Bruce Pearl just did not prepare his guys as well for.
Yeah, Nathan, then it's easy. You think it's easy for Alabama after beating Auburn at home or beating Tuscaloosa, sorry, that it's going to be kind of hard to bounce back the next game and come out with the same type of energy. And they did that against LSU and ended up winning that game 109-88. But then you look at Auburn on the other hand, and after pretty much selling the end of that game to Alabama, and you want to see a bounce back kind of performance from then against Mississippi State, who is a pretty good basketball team.
They're physical. They're physical.
Yeah. And you expect Auburn to come out and sort of bounce back, but then they don't do that. They lose 64-58. So just what are your thoughts on how both these teams sort of responded to this game?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy for Alabama team to come out after the Auburn win and kind of be flat. And I think, honestly, I saw a little bit of that early on the Alabama-LSU game. But it's just coaching down the stretch. What Nate was able to do, the adjustments he made, especially at halftime, it was so close. Alabama comes out and just basically takes over the game. They start hitting more shots. And that's the biggest thing, just getting the 3-pointers up. And Alabama's wins this season, I think they've made around 10 or more threes, and in their losses, they've made less. So the answers and the 3-point shooting, you're shooting efficiently, you're able to get it done. 14 from 30, 14 to 34 from behind the arc in this one. Latrell Wrightsell gives you 19, 5 of 10 from 3. Ryland Griffin, 4 of 6 from behind the arc, he gives you 12. I mean, your starters all scored in double digits, and that's with Mark Sears getting his daily 20-plus points. So it's easy to come out after a big win like that and just fall flat. But Nato just continues to prepare his guys well. And, I mean, 109 points. That's the 7th 100-point game of the season. It looks like an NBA team almost, the way they shoot the ball. But swinging over to Auburn and the way they played, another road matchup, you get to the hump. Mississippi State, very physical matchup. Plays pretty much a 2-center lineup. With good old I forget his name.
Tulu Smith.
Yeah, Tulu Smith. He's been at Mississippi State for some time now. It's basically the long list of centers who play very physical and get themselves to the free throw line or just take over in the paint. And neither of these teams shot well. But I felt like Mississippi State throughout the game was a more scrappy team. They were able to make plays. They were able to hustle more. And that's what it came down to. Auburn couldn't shoot the ball well, 25% from behind the arc, 6 of 24. And really, I felt like Auburn throughout this stretch of games has really tried to redefine themselves as a team and take more outside shots, which that's not what they've been doing. They've been getting, when they started conference play, it was always transition, fast break points, getting paint touches, and swinging the ball and trying to find the open man. But now I feel like it's just trying to find whoever can take the three. And especially in this one, no one really wanted to be the guy to shoot the ball. And I don't know if that's just coming off the last game, no one being a really confident shooter, but I felt like they were just swinging the ball around, getting late in the shot clock, and everyone was like, oh, I don't want to shoot the ball, and then someone has to put it up. It wasn't a good look. And against a team like Mississippi State, they're not going to give you easy shots. Yeah. And at some point, you're just going to have to decide, this is the shot I'm going to take, or I'm going to drive to the paint and try to get a foul call or something like that, get into the free throw line to get something going. It just didn't happen this one. It's a bad loss. It is, but Mississippi State as a team, they're very physical, and I felt like they were very underrated. And Hubbard, as he's a freshman, right, Alex?
Yeah, he's a freshman.
Yeah, just unbelievable. And I saw it in an Alabama game. He was just able to take over, even though they fell short in that one. Mississippi State is a lot better than what their record says, and this would have been a quad one win for Auburn. They still don't have that one yet, and that's very disappointing, especially this far through the season. Auburn's got to decide what they want to do this upcoming week. They don't have hard games, but it's not going to be easy either. But they got to decide what kind of team they want to be. If they want to continue to be this team that takes up these threes and tries to just play iso ball and stuff like that, it's not going to work well, in my opinion. This team is not designed for that. If they want to be the team that wants to be that defensive takeover, get to the fast break, get these easy points, build momentum, I think that's the right identity for them. That is what makes them Auburn, and that is what's going to be able to take them far, especially through the SEC, what's left, and then getting into the NCAA tournament. That is their identity, and they need to figure that out because they definitely got away from it these past few games.
Yeah, the problem with Auburn for me is you have Janai Broome, who I think is an absolute dog. But these 2 games they lost this week, he didn't get a lot of touches. Like he pointed out in the first game against Alabama, he should have had a lot more shots than that. And then in the Mississippi State game, I don't believe he had a point in the first half. And that's not all on Bruce Pearl's offensive scheme, game plan, and all that, because Mississippi State was doubling him in the post, denying him the ball. But when that happens, you got to have players that step up, take over a game. Jalen Williams is supposed to be the type of guy. We've seen Trey Donaldson, Chad Baker-Mazara, Denver Jones, all those type of guys have really good games. And these 2 games they lost this week, nobody stepped up. And somebody's got to step up when players are struggling. And that's the big issue with me for Auburn, is just that lack of the ability for one or two people to say, hey, Janiah Broome is struggling, or hey, Jalen Williams is struggling. Let me step up and let me take over this game. Because you see with Alabama, Mark Sears, he's had some games where he struggled a little bit. And then you have somebody like Latrell Wrightsell step up, or Aaron Estrada, or Rylan Griffin step up. And there's countless other examples of teams around the country. And it just feels like Auburn right now is sort of struggling to find that sort of identity in themselves when Janiah Broome struggles or doesn't get the amount of shots he needs to get. Who's going to step up? And that's the reason they've lost these 2 games.
Yeah. Do you feel like they have struggled not having a defined rotation? Because we've seen from countless games that Bruce Pearl will basically empty his bench and play whoever can play. But I feel like once they had gotten into these bigger games that they didn't have a defined rotation. It was kind of like players were mashed together. I felt like chemistry was a little bit off in some of the roles they had. And no one was really the dominant player on the floor at the time, other than a guy like Janiah Broome.
Yeah, I think it's good to have this type of depth that Auburn has, especially when you're starting out in the season, sort of trying to put the puzzle pieces together. But when you get into conference play and these tougher matchups, you're going to have to shrink your bench a little bit, because, like you said, like you just point out there, Nathan, it's kind of hard to get that chemistry between guys and to get people in a rhythm, because when you're basically playing platoon swaps and giving these guys 5 minutes here, 5 minutes here, and sort of trying to switch them all out, it's hard to get that rhythm and that chemistry between these players. And I really do think that's become an issue here recently. And the problem, I look at the Alabama game that they had, and I look at Trey Donaldson off the bench. He had 8 points and shot 3 for 5 and 2 for 3 from 3. Well, why was he not playing more? He looked like he was the only guard that could really get anything going offensively. And it just felt like Bruce Pearl had this mentality of, let's continue to switch these players in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. And it just really come back to bite him in the butt. So I think going forward, he's going to have to shrink this bench and sort of make the hard decisions of, hey, this guy has not been playing well recently. It's time for him to be out of the rotation for now. And maybe he gets a chance to come back in it. Maybe he doesn't. We'll see. I look at somebody like Leroy Berman. I mean, dude's a walking liability on both ends of the court. I don't think he needs to get playing time much anymore. Maybe look at a guy like Chris Moore. I know he starts and I know he brings a lot defensively, but I mean, he plays.
He doesn't offer anything on offense at this point.
He's really timid to shoot the ball. I don't know what that looks going for him going forward. But really outside of those guys, I mean, everybody else I think brings something to the table for the most part. So I think going forward, it's just going to have to be Bruce Pearl making the tough decisions here, saying, hey, we got depth. It's a good thing to have if somebody gets injured or if we see somebody struggling, but we can't just continue to play 10, 11 guys and hope we beat teams that are really defensive, really good on both ends of the court and expect to come out on top.
You know, I liked one thing you said, Alex, when we were talking a few days ago. Best teams in the country have a dominant guard and that are able to score. Alabama has it in Mark Sears. Auburn has guys that are capable of that. I think Aiden Holloway is capable of that. He's young. He has shown to be a little bit more timid these last few games. Trey Donaldson, I think, has the capabilities to be that guy, but he's also been kind of timid, especially the game in Mississippi State. Katie Johnson, at this point, I don't see it happening. But there's got to be someone on the team besides Janiah Broome who wants to say, give me the ball, I'm going to go score at will.
Yeah. It's just hard to win a basketball game at the college level without a dominant guard. I mean, you look at teams that are having success this year, North Carolina with RJ Davis, Tennessee with Dalton Connect. UConn has countless guards that can take over a game. Tristan Newton, Spencer, Stephon Castle when he's healthy. I mean, Purdue, Fletcher Laurier, Braden Smith, both those guys can take over a game. So if you don't have that dominant guard, especially when it comes to March, it's going to be a struggle to go far. So Nathan, talking about March, what is your way too early Final Four prediction right now?
At this point, I don't even know. I feel like this season has been not very consistent. You're gonna have
kind of like last season.
a lot of big teams losing. Kansas has lost. Houston has lost. Really, the only two teams that have been super consistent, in my opinion, has been UConn. Purdue's been up there. Gosh, I don't know. Outside of UConn and Purdue, it's literally a coin flip. I don't know. I liked Memphis for a while there, but they've kind of fallen off. I don't know what has happened there. North Carolina is definitely up there. They've been playing very, very good in conference play, but you wonder if they have peaked too early, because that can happen sometimes.
Yeah,
but I'll go ahead and throw North Carolina in there. And then I feel like there's always that one team that just sneaks in. And at this point, I don't even know. I feel like Tennessee has a very, very good roster.
Yeah.
And they've been playing very, very well. Dalton Connect can just keep being the type of player he is, and them having that suffocating defense, I feel like Tennessee can make it. I think the biggest question will be answered for me when they play Kentucky this week is how far can they go? Because that would be a great test. But as of right now, I think I'll take UConn, Purdue, UNC, and Tennessee. I feel like that's a decent lineup as of right now, but that will probably be completely changed by the time we get to
I'm
March.
sure it will be. For me, I think UNC, this is the way they've been playing so far, with RJ Davis playing at a Wooden Award type level, Armando Bacot holding down the interior, Harrison Ingram being that glue guy that they all sort of rally around, him being on the boards a lot. I think he had I want to say 18 rebounds this past week. I think he had a 20 rebound game the other week or something like that. Cormac Ryan's been shooting the ball pretty well. Elliot Cadeau has been amazing. I sort of harped on him a few weeks ago about how he was turning the ball over, not really being that initiator on offense and kind of struggling. But these past few games, he's really turned it on, and I've been pretty impressed with him. So I think North Carolina's got to be in there, my Final Four. Then I look at UConn, just the plethora of weapons they have. I talked about Spencer and Newton at the guard position. Stephon Castle, when he's healthy, is pretty good. Alex Caravan is kind of their glue guy, so to say. Klingon, who's been struggling with injuries. Yeah, he's really good threat on the interior. They got a lot of depth, so I think UConn's really poised to make that run again. And I think Arizona, I know they've sort of stumbled recently, but as people have pointed out, Kansas struggled when they had their championship run a few years ago, and they ended up getting there. I think Arizona, they have that guard that can take over in March, and Caleb Love. They got a lot of guys around him like Larson, Ballo, Keyshawn Johnson, who was in the national championship last year. And they got some good
experience there.
A lot of experience. So I think Arizona can do it. It'll just come down to if Caleb Love cannot shoot 1 for 11 from 3. but I think he has the capability to do it. He did it a couple years ago with North Carolina. And then that 4 slide, it's really a toss-up. I wanted to take Tennessee there, but you kind of already put them in yours. And with Tennessee, it's sort of live and die by Dalton Connect. If he doesn't play well, they're going to struggle on offense. I really want to say Marquette because they have two really good guards in Tyler Kolek, and then I believe it's Cam Jones. Yeah, Cam Jones. I think those guys are really good, but like you pointed out, Nathan, there's always that surprise team in March that you like. Where did they come from? Last year we had San Diego State and FAU.
Yeah, 2 surprise teams there.
Yeah. And I'm looking at 2 teams here. I think one, Iowa State, I don't know if that's technically a surprise team because they just beat Kansas, but I think they're really good. They got a good big 3 in Lipsy, Gilbert, and then Milano. I want to try to pronounce his last name at the big man position. I think they can do good things in March. They've already beaten a lot of good teams. And I look at New Mexico. Their coach by Richard Pitino, the son of Rick Pitino. Their guards, I think it might be the best guard trio in the country. Jamal Mashburn Jr., Jalen House, and Donovan Dent. All those guys averaging over 14 points a game. Then they got a 4 in JT Toppin, who's almost averaging a double-double. So I think New Mexico might be a sneaky team to get into the Final Four. And I think I might put them on my Final Four right now to be that surprise team, just having New Mexico in there alongside UNC, UConn, and Arizona.
Yeah, this is gonna go all out the window.
Yeah, it really will be.
We're gonna come back to this, and it's gonna look like the worst Final Four prediction of all time. Just because this season has been so crazy already.
Yeah.
I do want to mention one thing. No one mentioned Arkansas. Is Arkansas even gonna make the tournament, Alex?
We're talking about the National Invitational Tournament.
Are they going
Or
to
talking
get
about
invited to that?
No, they'll probably get invited to one of those other tournaments they have now. I don't know. There's like so many of them. There's like the NIT. There's something else that's like in Hawaii or the Bahamas in there.
I don't know. At this point, it doesn't matter.
The Must Bus has finally broken down. It's no longer operating.
Well, their fans deserve every second of it. It's okay. Honestly, if you had to pick another team from the SEC besides Tennessee to perform well in March, who would that team be?
I mean, Auburn, I think they still have the capabilities of it right now to perform well, but I sort of pointed them out a couple weeks ago saying they were a Final Four caliber team. But I look at Kentucky. I know they're really young, have a lot of freshmen, but they have a guy like Antonio Reeves. They got some good big men, Trey Mitchell, guys like that. I think they can make a run. It's just going to be a question mark of can Calipari get it done in March again? He's only got it done once.
Yeah, I think he has a roster too, and he has a lot of talent. I know it's young, but if Calipari is really as great of a coach as people say he is, I think he's going to be able to do some good things for that roster.
We'll see. He hasn't proven it recently. All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening and watching Students of the Game.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.